Hey, everybody, you're listening to and watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Brian Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or in this case, stream in. And some of us didn't really have a lot of time to read comic books since our last episode, so we decided to do something a little bit different again. And we decided for this episode, we're going to talk about our favorite animated programs and movies based on comic book properties. So we have a wide array of content to choose from between American cartoons and made for, in the old days called, direct to video. And naturally, when you consider the enormous amount of manga to anime projects, that's a whole other aspect of things that we can choose from. So between the three of us, we probably have some pretty interesting choices. And if you are streaming in and participating in the chat, we definitely want to hear what some of yours are as well. So before we get going, though, I did want to bring up one bit of news because it does have a slight effect on comic book oriented properties, at least one film in particular. Just as we went to press, HBOMax announced that Warner Brothers' entire slate of films for 2021 is going to be premiering in theaters and on HBO Max at the same time, basically following the same pattern that Wonder Woman 1984 is set, where it's on HBO Max for 31 days. Then you have to see it in theaters. Then it goes through what people are anticipating to be the regular home video route, with it being available for rent or buy, or like me, and I'm still the Blu-ray dude. So, what do you guys think of this?
Yay!
I'm just I'm interested.
Sure.
I wish, in hindsight, 2020 was that way.
Yeah. Oh, like all
really
movies in 2020, or just the year 2020?
If we had to have this version
Streaming
of 2020,
only.
it would have been nice to have this. Instead of date after date being pushed back, and
I would love to have been able to sit back and watch the new Dune movie coming up at my home theater, which is decent. The only thing about this announcement, the only thing I didn't realize, because I just haven't been paying attention, HBO Max does not have 4K, and if you have a 4K system, which some of us do. Oh, wait, what? That's corrected.
Actually,
okay.
Wonder Woman is going to be streamed and available in 4K for the streaming services the streaming devices that you have for HBO Max. It's going to be the first one. Well, it wasn't originally. Originally, it was going to be like everybody was like, they don't have 4K for anything else on HBO Max, so they were like, no, okay, this will be 1080p max like everything else. But they have stated that it will be available in 4K with full Dolby sound and HDR if you have the setup for it.
I want Atmos. So. I want 4K with HDR, 9+ inches, whatever that is. And yes.
Okay. And let me read some of the domestic theatrical slate that we're going to be enjoying on HBO Max, if we have it. Mortal Kombat on January 15th. There's a Tom and Jerry film on March 5th. The Many Saints of Newark, which is the Sopranos prequel, that is on March 12th. Godzilla vs. Kong on May 21st. Another Conjuring film, The Devil Made Me Do It, on June 4th. The adaptation of Lin-Manuel Miranda's In the Heights on June 18th, which I personally think is a far superior show to Hamilton. But I know I'm like extreme minority on that.
Hot take.
Whatever. A sequel to Space Jam on July 16th. The Suicide Squad on August 6th. Brian, Dune on October 1st.
Yeah.
And then we have Matrix 4 on December 22nd.
Oh my goodness.
So it's quite a slate, at least in terms of genre films. There's plenty there.
It's a great slate for sure, and the fact that it's going to be day and date available in theaters, because David Toby actually in the comments here has asked whether movie theaters are still open and functioning. And yes, but it depends on the state.
Yep.
And because of the COVID restrictions, a lot of them are extremely limited in the number of people that are allowed to attend each screening, which has put a lot of movie theaters in a really precarious position, because even the ones that are open can't really have a big enough audience to I'm trying to think the best way to put to really remain in business or like in the same amount that they used to. There's
we do have a chain, Regal, which basically once the news came down of the Bond film being postponed, that they basically shut down operations temporarily. And I guess this is at least for half the country. The AMC chain is going through like a tremendous restructuring. And I know for both myself and Mike Lovins, we both had AMC 24 screen theaters shut down for good.
Yeah. And it is too bad, but at the same time, what's interesting about this is that a lot of independent movie theaters are actually not doing terrible. A lot of them do have other avenues of support, but also the response that they've had to both the decision with Universal in releasing, shortening the window for release on video on demand versus in theaters only, exclusive theater distribution. But then also with the HBOMax decision by putting something, where people can safely watch it in their own home, if they so choose, or they can go to the movies to experience on the big screen. Right now, probably not with a lot of people, which is one of the big draws for a lot of people, a lot of movie viewers, to go and see it with a ton of people, which obviously isn't a good idea now. I love going to the movies alone or with my husband, but seeing it alone in a movie theater all alone for me has been something I've done all my life. So not a big deal for me to go see it in the movie theater. But personally, I'm taking a break from the movies until basically I'm vaccinated. So I don't really want to take the risk. I don't want to, risk having a small crew of teenagers be responsible for cleanliness and health. So
I have a friend in Orlando who used to work for Regal, I believe. She was a manager. And she is a cinemaphile. She's like, but she liked working there because it was a way to get to see free movies,
Yeah.
And they shut down, right? Regal closed, I think. I don't know if they're reopening in parts. But anyway, in Florida, they were shut down for a while. And she was like, hey, local art house theater, are you hiring? And they were. And, of course, Florida is, the Wild West, crazy town, so everything's open. But that art house cinema theater, like you said, is doing very well because they actually have a nice outdoor lawn where they can show movies and make it a good experience. And they have other ways to make it safe. So I think art house theaters should keep alive and do whatever they can. And the rest of the cinema industry can go online, and I'm fine with that. I mean, big events will still happen. There will be cinema draft houses. Alamo probably will do well with this, and good, because they're a fantastic franchise, right? I think they're a franchise. Anyway, I want that, and I want the rest to die.
but also, I have to say, during this COVID period, again, I'm in the same boat as Steve. You're not getting me to a movie theater these days. But it was refreshing to see how many classic films entered into distribution at the major theaters. I think that's, it's tough when, your basic your option, depending upon certain markets, might only be Fathom events that play 3 times.
Fathom events are also a nice feature of cinemas now, and I hope that those find a home somehow. Again, though,
but it was nice to see The Empire Strikes Back play for a week somewhere. Yeah, and I'd like to see that post-COVID.
Absolutely.
Drive-ins.
Drive-ins. Yeah, drive-ins have come back from
drive-ins are back.
I love that.
Which is wild.
Steve and I both were laughing, I think, at the same thing here a second ago.
Yeah.
Our former co-host and dear friend Matt Broussard is watching on YouTube. Hi, Matt. Said, after 2020, I'm unused to watching movies with pants on. 100% fair. My dress code in this house for work and for watching movies is less than adequate to go out into the world. So, yeah. I may not be fully dressed now. I mean, you don't know. You're only seeing this, so no.
I was going to the a week ago. I was going to the dentist, but then I had car trouble. I actually dressed up to go to the dentist. I actually had a collared shirt on to go to the dentist.
Just because, like, you wanted to.
I'm going outside. I haven't worn these clothes in ages. I was gonna be styling at the dentist. I had khakis on.
Ooh.
Yeah, it wasn't
business casual realness. I love
yeah.
So we have some good comments here as well. Also on the Facebook side, David Toby, who had mentioned the issue. I believe, David, you're in Australia, and he was curious, what the movie theater situation was for here in the United States, because in Australia, they have 10 COVID cases. Because they knew how to, deal with it. James Figueredo, hello, James, also has a very different experience to David, and probably relatively similar to the United States, down in Brazil, where, government didn't really give a shit, so to speak, about the coronavirus and enforcing restrictions and providing a mandate. So it's kind of like Florida, with patchwork of different mandates and restrictions, and could be some places are probably, and I'm sure, James, there are some places where they're pretty good about it, and in other places where it's just pack the bars, pack the restaurants, pack your movie theaters, who cares, so it's
hide your children, hide your
hide your husband. He's getting everybody out there. But yeah, I do miss being in a movie theater. I don't miss it enough to put myself in that situation. And the one thing, and Brian, one of the things that I really enjoyed, just probably to end this topic, but speaking of big chains, I know that, in terms of like big chains versus indie houses and unique experiences, AMC and even Regal were doing some really interesting things in the past year and a half, 2 years, with their sort of membership process, where you could pay a flat monthly fee and go and see as many movies as you want at their screens, which is great if you go and see a lot of movies in the movie theater, and you don't care when you go. You can go during the day, in the afternoon, during the week, whatever. If you get time off, go and see a movie. I think is was really great. And we were just starting to take advantage of it this year until March. And the last time we went to the movies was in March, when everything went. So, I hope they bring it back. I don't think it's economically feasible for them to do so.
I can also state with absolute truthfulness, hand on Bible, that Steve is a lot of fun to go see a movie with.
And so is Bill. Bill's a lot of fun to see movies with too.
Yeah, so I hope we do that again.
Especially if there are large cardboard advertisements on picture set. Yeah.
We were referring to the promotional setup they had for Teen Titans Go to the Movies, and we were in the mood there.
In the movie.
But I definitely enjoy going to films with you. So I hope we do that again.
Yeah, I missed that. Next year. We'll do it.
I'll come down to Charlotte just so we can see films. Sorry, Winston.
Yes. I'll go up to Jersey. You guys have movie theaters.
We do, but it's it's not as prevalent as you would think in the Princeton area, which you think would be an art house capital. Mm-hmm. We have Montgomery Theater, which is that's like old people movies. Which is why we go there a lot, because of Rob. Like anything with Maggie Smith, like seriously, like the second Exotic Marigold Hotel, that was like the Empire Strikes Back for those people. I mean, that was a huge event there. It seriously was sold out like the entire weekend. The first weekend it played there, but they also did transition over to a substantial amount of documentaries that they were showing. So we did see the David Crosby documentary, Laurel Canyon one, like Judy, the Renee Zellweger. That's like the perfect film to play there. So there is that like quasi artist house, and then there's a theater that's right in Princeton, which will show like a intensively art foreign film, but on the other screen will be like a Tom Cruise film, so that they stay in business. So
that's neat.
Oh God, you had to say Tom Cruise, and I'm still steeping in the Leah Remini, whatever, and Mike Render.
Scientology, all what's their newer podcast called?
It's called Fair Game.
Fair Game, yes.
Yeah. Did you guys listen to the episode with what's his face from The Vow?
Not yet.
Not yet.
It's like 2 away. I cannot.
The one
wait.
with Mark, yeah.
Oh my God.
Is Bonnie on that one too? Did Bonnie
no, Bonnie's not. They talk about Mark. Bonnie a lot, but she's not on the episode. But it fills in holes in The Vow that you didn't know were there. It's
cool.
I can imagine.
Really like an amazing 2 hours.
I just watched the Jehovah's Witness, the end of season 3 of their A&E show, and I had known about Jehovah's Witness because when you're raised like Southern Baptist, whatever, you learn about all the other like cults, and in this case, absolutely cult. But I had no idea. I just didn't know. I had just heard like little things. But when you sit there and you hear story after story, oh my God.
Yeah.
Blows your mind. Anyway, yeah, sorry. So Tom Cruise, it just,
Yeah.
Like I will not
and
see another...
And you know what? I never get that kind of from Travolta that I do from Tom Cruise. And I think some of it is...
I get more from Travolta.
Oh, see, I don't, because it seems like, he legitimately thinks that everything that happened to him was through Scientology.
Yeah.
If you listen to him in interviews, he's not as shut off from the world, obviously, as Cruise is. And then there's that whole David Miscavige union thing, which Travolta doesn't seem to be plugged into.
No, he's not.
Shelley? Yeah. Where is Shelley?
Where is Shelley?
Hashtag where is Shelley?
But no, I actually for a long time I had a huge crush on John Travolta. So yeah, that scene in Michael where he come down the stairs anyway.
How are you doing with him as Santa now?
He's Santa?
Yes.
What?
Where is he Santa?
He's Santa in a commercial with Samuel L. Jackson.
I don't watch commercials.
Yeah, I need to find this
on
YouTube.
It's on my page.
Right.
I say you're not going to beat this for the best commercial of the year. I cannot believe you guys didn't know about this.
We don't watch commercials. I mean, I watch YouTube more than I watch anything else other than like Netflix or something.
Yeah. Yeah, everything I have is commercial-free streaming. So like it's Hulu Plus and Disney Plus and Netflix and even my YouTube is premium. So no commercials there either.
That's privilege.
I don't even know if
that I pay for.
Yeah, I'm wondering, can you get Tubi without commercials?
I don't think they have a premium option. Kind of like Pluto TV. It's supported by the commercials. Roku TV is the same way. It's supported by the commercials, but
it's interesting to see the evolution of Tubi, because when I first started watching it, it was the same local commercials again and again for a local restaurant and a florist, and now it's like Mercedes-Benz,
Free zone. Like John Runyon says, commercial-free zone here.
Yeah. So yeah.
I found it. I found the John Travolta thing, and I'm just looking at the screenshot, and oh my God. I'll post a link to it in the chat.
Yeah, I'm shocked you guys didn't hear about this. So,
screenshot.
Yeah.
Matt Broussard mentions that Cruise picks great projects: Edge of Tomorrow, Oblivion, and the odd-numbered Mission Impossibles. And I do agree that I have enjoyed, despite my best attempts to not enjoy, a good number of Tom Cruise movies.
Well, the thing is, Tom Cruise also gets the pick of the litter.
Yeah,
you always have to keep that in mind. He is almost always the number one go-to for a number of type of films. I just remember growing up, and my line was, is that the new Tom Cruise movie where he plays the young yet troubled young man? Which was everything until, I guess, Magnolia.
Yeah. Isn't he? How old is he now? 60?
He's a few years older than me, and I'm not 60 yet. I'd place him at like 56 or so.
56.
Yeah.
I mean, he'll never age, because of Xenu and all that. But
oh no! He will age, but then his body will suddenly become of no use anymore. So he will transition to a new body. I mean, you got to keep up with this stuff here.
Yeah,
that's right. That's how it works.
I forgot the term.
That's how it works.
It's not disembodied, but it's something like that.
He shed his mortal something.
Yeah, they always have terminology.
Do the Thetans go with you, though?
I would assume the Thetans go with you. If you do all that work and spend all that money, come on, they got to go with you.
No, but Thetans you don't want the Thetans.
You shed the Thetans. So the Thetans
you shed the Thetans through your life, though, through your lifetime, right?
Yeah, but they shouldn't come back. I would hope, or maybe you get new ones. You get new Thetans, bonus Thetans.
Bonus Thetans. No, you don't want any more Thetans. Get rid of those Thetans. Those jerks.
My closest brush with Scientology was at BookCon one year, where they had a setup, and like half of it was Dianetics, and the other half was all that stuff. And they had these free cookies, and they were really good. So
they know how to publish.
They didn't make you do an audit while you were grabbing cookies?
The thing is, there's part of me would be fascinated to get on an e-meter and see what they say.
Yep.
But at the same token, I'm worried by the end of the day that, I'll have a hood on my head and I'll be in the back of a van headed towards Ontario or something. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, like if all those things, like in the vow with Nexium, doing the oh gosh, what is it? It's basically the psychoanalyst,
EM,
and doing an EM is essentially the same thing. You have somebody who's asking the questions, gauging your response, and then digging in further to elicit, a huge emotional eruption.
Yeah, and that was something interesting in the vow where they go through a lot of that and say, like, he didn't have any originality. He took this from Scientology. He took this from Est. He took this from Amway. It was a hot pot.
It works, and that's I think where he was able to keep the scam alive was he used all the stuff that worked. He saw what other people have been doing, and then, hey, I can make money of this too. Bookish Bear on YouTube, it said, "Oh my God, yes," to Travolta on the stairs, and Michael, you cannot see that scene, the rest of the movie and whatever, but you can not see that scene and go, yeah, I get it. And then James Figueredo as well. Interview with the Vampire was the first movie where he tried successfully, Tom Cruise, to break out of his usual roles.
Yeah, and I probably would give that mantle to Born on the 4th of July.
That, yes.
Yeah, I don't think he was completely successful at it because he never stopped being Tom Cruise as far as I was concerned.
But he is always Tom Cruise in every movie.
But it was still a good performance as Tom Cruise,
Yeah. No, I think he's made some great choices, or at least been given a lot of great choices for roles. So, I try not to like the movies that he's in. I'm very unsuccessful at doing so. So, Anyway, Tom Cruise.
Today's tangent episode sponsored by Scientology, Tom Cruise's agent,
and HBOMax.
And HBOMax.
All right, so we are 23 minutes and 49 seconds into our live broadcast. It's probably time to switch over to the comic book talk. But again, it's not really comic book talk because we didn't have time to read comic books. So one thing that has gone hand in hand, I think, with everybody, at least the three people here, and I think most people who are our age and younger, is I think very often our first exposure to comic book characters is through animation. I'm almost certain that's the case for many, many people. I don't know the percentage, but it's got to be the overwhelming majority. We're also three people of three different ages, so we have had different experiences with what we saw when we were younger, and so we all picked three comic book oriented animated series or movies, and we're going to talk about them for the remainder of the show. And as I said before when we started, if you want to chime in on the chat, please do. as we're transitioning between one or the other bear, maybe we can take a look at the notes and see what people are saying. So Steve, you're always my good luck charm. So let's start with you. Why don't you talk about an animated TV series or film that you dig?
Well, I'm glad actually you brought up the fact that we're kind of at different ages, but then also different childhoods. You know, one of the things that I unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, you know, 30 years back, I wasn't allowed to watch a lot of popular cartoons in the 80s. I was able to watch more family-oriented stuff, but anything that used a lot of magic or a lot of, you know, had a lot of dark or scary imagery, I wasn't allowed to watch. So Thundercats, I had to sneak it. He-Man had to sneak it. All that stuff. Never allowed to watch Dungeons and Dragons because clearly that would cause me to immediately go into a sewer somewhere and kill people or myself. And there were a lot of other things too. But I did get to see, because I was a huge TV nerd, indoor kid, Saturday mornings I would be downstairs at 5:30 in the morning so I could watch Photon and then just go all morning and then all afternoon with the Saturday matinees. But so, you know, in the 80s, I didn't really have a huge exposure to a lot of those cartoons that people, you know, consider like really important. I didn't have a ton of the toys. I would sometimes be able to get some of the He-Man toys, never got any of the Thundercat toys, all those things. But in the 90s, when I was old enough and my parents were a lot less strict, I was able to go back and watch a lot of these 80s cartoons. Also in the 90s, I discovered anime and manga. And so I had a little bit more of an attention towards the East and towards Japan that I definitely wouldn't have had in the 80s, or not knowing that any of these were Japanese cartoons like Voltron or Transformers originally. But you know, one of the things that popped on the scene in 1995 in the United States was Sailor Moon. And I was 14, going on 15, and just fell in love with it. And, you know, my friends at the same age at school, I was a sophomore in high school, we went nuts for it. Everything was Sailor Moon, this, that, and the other thing. We all picked our favorite sailors. We're kind of like Sex in the City. Were you a Ray or were you a Serena? You know, what, all these things. Loved them, loved the cartoon, went nuts, bought all the merch, and then also read a lot of the manga, anything I could find in English, and most of it was in Japanese, which was okay because I was taking Japanese, so I could like use it for class, you know. But it's such a really cool series, and it's very iconic because it, I think, did more than any other comic, you know, manga or anime series in the United States to really push that medium and to push that genre, because it hit such at a perfect time in the 90s and was just so popular. So just a little bit of background about the series. It was created by Naoko Takeuchi, originally as a manga, focusing on who eventually became Sailor Venus, but the main character was Sailor V. So her manga codename Sailor V. She did that in about, I think it was like 1991 was when she originally wrote it. And she really liked the concept, and her publisher Kodansha was like, hey, you've got something here. This is kind of cool. You like, it's got a magical girl. She's, you know, a crime fighter, kind of cool. Can we expand the concept? And so she and Kodansha and animation studio Toei came together to agree on creating this new property, this new concept called Sailor Moon. And it was actually really interesting in how they did it. We had been talking a little bit before the show started about, you know, finding out that sometimes a cartoon inspires a comic book as opposed to a comic book inspiring a cartoon. This one was done at the same time. So she came out with Kodansha published Sailor Moon, you know, the first arc, the first year of stories. And just a few months later, the cartoon would hit. So you would read the manga first, get really excited for it, and then the anime would come out. And it started about 1992. So you had 5 separate distinct storylines and series. The first Sailor Moon, and then the lettered series R, S, Super S, and Stars. And it was hugely popular over all 200 episodes. People would buy the comics, they love the manga, and then several months later, we get to see all of those storylines slightly changed, modified for TV, on the screen. And it was great. So, in case you're not familiar with it, it is a series that follows a young girl who's in high school or junior high, named Usagi. And here's an image up here of the original manga, published by Kodansha. Basically, Usagi is kind of a ditz. She's lazy and kind of a complete airhead. She ends up finding or running into a small talking cat named Luna, who lets her know that she is a Sailor Senshi. She is one of several super-powered women or girls who are the original protectors of the Queen of the Moon. And of course, with all of that, it comes a very skimpy sailor-like outfit, really cool powers, lots of accessories. They can transform, they fight bad guys, and all have the kind of powers that evolve as needed, depending on the antagonist and circumstance. It was modeled very much after the sort of the Power Rangers style of characters and development and storylines. So you have the core group of characters that come together and develop their superpowers together. And including in the cartoon series, if you are a fan of Power Rangers or any of the Super Sentai series from Japan, they have very similar plot constructs where you have the main plot, which is sort of like the real life plot that always folds into whatever monster of the week they're going to be fighting. And of course, it starts off, they fight, they lose, and then finally, the Senshi come together and they use their powers to overpower the monster. There are lots of other Senshi that are introduced in the original series, and then you have a lot more that are introduced in the later series. It's very interesting for having two relatively important characters who are lesbians, who are a couple, so Neptune and Uranus. Just having some really cool, very female-first types of storytelling. A lot of shoujo style, which is what the style is in manga as well as anime, where the men are cute and very feminine. There's a lot of romance mixed in with the violence and action. And of course, because it's Japan, lots of incidental nudity. When it came to the US in 1995, US and Canada, it was severely edited to take out all the naughty bits and anything that, implied homosexuality. And was, translated with really perky character voices. Basically, what were they called? There were the Sailor Moon Says lessons at the end of every episode. They were able to translate almost the first 100 episodes, so people in the U.S. and Canada and English-speaking world were able to see quite a bit of the series before they stopped translating it. And I think it was some kind of rights issue between DiC and Kodansha. But it was really great. There's been so many spinoffs. You've had a live action series in 2003. There's been several movies based on the individual seasons. Did
you see Crystal?
Crystal this is one of those interesting situations where there has been a reboot remake of the original cartoon series called Sailor Moon Crystal. Came out, I want to say just about 2000. What did you say? 2015, something like that.
Years,
2014.
Yep.
And actually, it's still technically going. They were supposed to finish it up with a film this year, but it got unfortunately postponed. So here's an image of Sailor Moon Crystal.
I think, having been a fan of the original, but watching the dub, which is not great, or the original English dub thing that aired here first, Crystal, from what I've seen, is a lot closer to the comics, the manga, and a little more streamlined. I mean, not identical, right? It's still an adaptation, but streamlined without the extra stuff that you would invariably have to write in American adaptations when the manga hasn't caught up, and it's happened with other anime series as well, like not Inuyasha. What's the Fox one? Naruto.
Naruto, yeah.
Yeah, that was a question I had for you, Steve, as somebody who, never watched it ever. If it was faithful to the manga series, but it sounds like I got my answer with what Crystal.
Yeah, Crystal I think is a little bit is better because and it is much shorter. That's the thing. The manga series, was good, but there wasn't a ton of it. So she would write the manga, it would be published, and then they would have to somehow translate, however many volumes into an entire 20-something or 30-something episode arc. And there was a lot of filler that Toei, who put out the anime, put in. But it's really interesting. And, you can really tell how old somebody is by what version of Sailor Moon they've seen. If they're, in the US or Canada. And what they call the character names, because the character names are of course all translated. So for me, it's hard for me to call Usagi. I still think of her as Serena. I know it's stupid. I find it really tough to do. Endymion is to me, and Mamoru, which is the English, is the Japanese name for Darien, who is the love interest, also known as Tuxedo Mask. Ooh, very mysterious. And by the way, if you ever try to explain to anybody what the plot of any of Sailor Moon is, it is cuckoo bananas.
Oh, boy.
It is very wacky. It involves essentially immortal reincarnation of, interstellar people who the most powerful kingdom in the
actually.
Oh yeah, the most powerful kingdom in the universe was the moon. And like the kingdom of the moon, and it's very bizarre.
Then you get Chibi, the Chibi, what's her name?
Chibiusa.
Yeah, and that time travel component, that also just Sailor Moon is incomprehensible. But we do have some comments.
She fights with her own daughter. Her daughter goes back to the past, falls in love with her own dad, who doesn't know that it's her dad, and hates her mother because she doesn't know it's her mother. And it's just there's some weird ass. And nobody questions it. By the way, Chibi is there.
So James Figueredo talking about the live action, that there is this mixed live action series with animation.
Yes.
I think I saw parts of it too, and I was like, what?
So that is infamous. It was shown once at some convention sometime. It was originally a pitch by Deke. They wanted to bring Sailor Moon to the United States and Canada, but they didn't want to bring the original animation. So very much unlike what happened with Robotech, Macross to Robotech, they were like, no, we want to redo this. So they envisioned it as live action, and then they would transform into animated versions of themselves. And I'm
confused with how this works with Robotech.
So Robotech it was brought over to the US.
Three different series.
Different series. They took it. And even though the animation stayed the same, they just re-edited it, rewrote a lot of it, and, turned it into Robotech. Deke wanted to take the concept of Sailor Moon and just completely, take the basic info, 5 girls with superpowers who transform, and just do that. And obviously nobody bought it. It was garbage. So they decided to just go back to the original animation itself and just edit it and redub it for American audiences and, North American audiences. But that's very infamously terrible. If you can find any little bit of footage of it, it looks like a really bad early 90s toy commercial.
Yeah. We also have John Runyon. I guess he lived in Japan when he was younger, but didn't know the language at the time, so didn't follow it. But wants to go back now and read it. So a viewing order, reading order. I would humbly recommend you start with Crystal, because Crystal is that boiled down modern animation. It's really well produced. There's some issues with the second season. I think actually the first season, and then they fixed some of that in the second season or whatever. But it's very true to the material. In a good way, and then if you like it, maybe branch off and go back and watch the Deke. I always said Dick because obvious series. Find the old ones that have actually, I think, been re-released by Viz, right? Didn't Viz get
Yeah. Viz also translated everything, so it's hard right now to get the original Deke versions of the cartoons, and so sometimes you can find them on YouTube. You can find them on torrent sites, basically, but a lot of them are not available for purchase right now. What Viz did is they took all of the original Japanese animation and just redubbed it from there. So the characters all have the original Japanese names. They have mostly all new voice actors for everything. So it's it's a much more faithful translation. They don't edit out a lot of the nudity or sexual connotations or anything. So
thank God. Also, Matt Broussard, and totally fair. A lot of people, it's a testament to the show that they still cosplay these characters.
Oh yeah.
And then the voice actors that do show up are just inundated with all these people. This reminded me of the fact that Cena Grace, our friend, is looking for more Bear Scouts to draw. So if somebody wants to be immortalized as a Bear Scout, they should reach out to Cena and see if there's still spots open. I think that would be a great Christmas gift for some people. Yeah.
But yeah. And I don't know, Bill, have you seen any of Sailor Moon, either the manga or the anime? Nothing?
I was on mute. Zip. Nooch. Nada.
It's
I have a basic knowledge of what the concept is, because I mean it was around,
Yeah.
Just like I have a basic concept of Naruto, or One Piece, I mean, these things that are so big that you have a general idea of what they are without even really being exposed, ever really watching it. So.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it just doesn't. It never sounded like something that was in my wheelhouse.
Well, it is. It's magical.
I probably, if they had done like a Wonder Woman and her friends rip off of it, I probably would have sucked it up. I'll be honest.
Hey, if they had done a Wonder Woman and her friends in this kind of context, I think it would have done really well. Well,
there was. You can look this up. There was an abandoned toy line where they had the She-Ra molds, She-Ra from Masters of the Universe, and it was called Wonder Woman and it just left, and the Star Raiders. And there were some DC Comics characters. There was Ice, there was Fire, but there were also some original characters, and it sounds like it was very much along those lines of She-Ra and cutesy and and the only book that ever came out, because again it was an abandoned toy line, they never really got moving too far in the animation. There was a Cinnabon comic book in Cinnabons. It's some kind of cinnamon based bun, maybe Drake's, I'm not sure, and that's the only Wonder Woman and the Star Raiders comic that's ever come out. Yeah.
Well, I did before we move on, I did want to say one thing that's really fun about Sailor Moon is the enemies, the villains that they have. You have the big overarching villains like the Black Moon and oh god, what was it? Was it Phobos 9, Phobos 90, something like that. Pharaoh 90. They are crazy. The monsters every week and the concepts, and we have a little visitor here from my kitty, are just insane. And it harkens back to that one Family Guy aside where they're talking about Stephen King phoning stuff in. And one of the big jokes is, this couple is attacked by a lamp monster. Ooh, scary. Well, guess what? Sailor Moon has had plenty of lamp monsters, mailbox monsters, monsters that are cupcakes, just all sorts of insanity. Whatever you can think, they've made a monster creature out of it, as goofy as possible, that's beaten by the power of friendship and love. So it is fun and crazy, and over 200 episodes. There's plenty to enjoy and roll your eyes at, but it's holds a great big place in my heart. So,
James Figueredo, I guess, said that Garcia Lopez did some concept art for Wonder Woman and the Star Raiders. So I can't imagine Barbie and Sailor Moon mixed together. I mean, I guess I kind of can, but okay.
Well, Mattel was Barbie and was She-Ra, so
that makes sense.
There's some alignment there, but it was the She-Ra molds. It totally was just reusing them. So, all right, Bryan, let's hear from you. What's one of those animated things that you dig?
It's so funny because I just did the hashtag, what is it, 10 favorite TV shows or whatever that thing that people are doing now on the Facebook. And I was like, I look back, someone called me out like, well, what about blah, blah, blah animated show? And I was like, oh my God, I've blocked out all animated series from my life, which is bizarre. Because I love animated series. I'm a huge animated consumer. But I think in relation to comics, I will do a Japanese one, not this first one, but I have to start with, I think what started it all, which is X-Men, the animated series. And I'm sure I'm not the only person out there in the world. Yay, you got it there. I love it.
I still have the Best Buy sticker.
Hey, sometimes you can't take that thing off without ruining your cover, getting all that gummy shit.
It's true.
So I remember very distinctly getting into this around the time I got into comics. I started reading comics in 92 or 93, and it was at not a Barnes & Noble. It was at a what was the bookstore in the mall? Walden Books.
Walden Books or B. Dalton.
It was Walden Books, but I remember B. Dalton as well. And so I was there looking at a spinner rack, and I was like, oh my God, it's the X-Men. I just watched the animated series X-Men on Fox News, Fox Children, or whatever the show, whatever the network. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to totally get what's going on. And it was around the time when Cyclops and the X Factor crew was coming back into X-Men. So I kind of knew basic stuff. But otherwise I was kind of lost, as you'd expect with X-Men. But this animated series went on for a long time and has really informed and sort of followed even the comics mythology, adapting so many different eras and storylines. I was just going back through basically just like a wiki to kind of go, oh God, yeah, what series, what stuff they did, classic, X-Men, Uncanny X-Men 141 with Mutant Registration Act, or Days of Future Past. A lot of the Claremont stuff, obviously they mined that. There's Genosha, they covered that. They covered the X Factor era that Peter David wrote, the original one with those lovely like leather vests and stuff. Apocalypse. What else? I mean,
Phoenix Saga.
Phoenix Saga, of course. So I mean, and not only did they cover that stuff, so the comics had an influence on the show, obviously, but the show had an influence on the comics later with Max Wittert and his Jean and Cyclops sort of soap opera, sitcom-y kind of indie comic that he did, which eventually became part of the Strange Tales anthology that Marvel did. I think it was Strange Tales or Strange Tales 2. Alpha Flight, John Runyon pointed out that the Alpha Flight had the cameo in there. I mean, if you're a fan of X-Men books, which I think by now anyone who's heard me talk about comics knows that I'm a fan of the X books, and it's a part of my whole life, right? Like, this is a must. This is a key thing. Now, was the animation good? No. The animation was not always good. Was the voice acting good? Well, I mean, it was okay for the time.
At the same token, though, you have to view it in the time that it happened.
100%.
And there was a lot more nuance to that than some other garbage that was out at the time.
That's true.
I mean, there was a cartoon called Samurai Pizza Cats that lasted for way too long.
No, it was much better than some of its peers, to be fair. But there's just so many famous little screen grabs that you can find on the internet there, and if you want to see some of the egregious animation stuff. But yeah, I can't. I have to start there. There were certainly other animated tie-ins. I actually realized as I was going back looking into this, I got into the X-Men prior, at least in theory. There was a PC game, X-Men 2: Follow the Mutants, and I don't know if you guys played these games back in that era. But I was like finding stuff about it, and I was like, actually, I think I got into comics by that game, but only like after accumulation of that and then watching the animated series of X-Men. So like, it just propelled me forward. And it made me think about kids out there and how they probably in some ways likely are transitioning to either manga, comics, or other properties from animated and TV representation of these characters. So it's a grand tradition that I'm glad I'm part of. I don't know if I will watch the whole thing again in my lifetime, because I feel like it's a better memory to have fondly than to sit there and maybe go, oh wow, yeah, that was interesting. You know, like I think I may like find some highlights that are pretty positive and revisit those. Yeah, no, I love it.
I wish somebody would do like a montage of Jubilee freaking out, because that was like every episode she had like some kind of breakdown.
I do enjoy her ridiculousness in that series, and it's unfortunate because even though in the comics she got kind of the short end of the stick for a while, I think she's gotten a lot of better storyline since. But Matt Broussard has got John Runyon, Imperial Guard, of course. You know, anything with the X-Men is going to involve the Shi'ar, right? Matt's got a thing about an opposite experience with the X-Men cartoon. Started reading in the mid-'80s, and the continuity of the cartoon was too far off from the source material for me. That makes sense, and that's kind of the thing where if I haven't read a book and there's a movie coming out, I actually will not read the book until after the movie, only because I don't want to be sitting there like, oh, that doesn't line up, you know. But when you don't have a choice. Yeah. And then the Jim Lee stuff, it did get the stuff in that era of the Jim Lee art a little closer, because it was there, right?
That was one thing I wanted to say, because at the same time that X-Men was going, probably the most prominent other cartoon in that same idiom was Batman the Animated Series. Mm-hmm. And the style that was on the X-Men cartoon was so much more closely mirrored what you were seeing on Batman. And as somebody who was an adult, this will surprise people, but I actually in the 90s had more exposure to the X-Men animated series than Batman, because I'm an adult, and let me tell you, 5 days a week is a bit much. 1 day a week on Saturday mornings was far easier to stay on top of. And I'm just interested, for people who were just getting into comics, because the animated style was so much more aligned with what was happening in the comic books for X-Men, if that was something that was inviting to people who got into it from there. One other thing I will heartily recommend, have you guys ever heard the Japanese intro to the X-Men series? It is amazing. It's thrash metal. It ends with "Cry for the Moon." It is the most amazing theme song. You just don't expect it the first time you play it. So do seek that out.
Can't say I have heard that, but now I have to.
I'm finding it and I'm putting it in the chat.
"Cry for the Moon." It's amazing.
I mean, that theme song, the original, original English theme song,
yeah.
It is iconic. At this point, you could play it in any location where there's a lot of nerds, or just anybody who grew up in the 90s, anybody who watched TV in the 90s, and they will immediately pick it up. It is one of those theme songs that's just immediately recognizable for anybody under the age of 60, probably.
Yeah. But I can also understand what Matt Broussard said about the continuity, because it was so mixed up. It was like they started where X-Men #1 started, and then Morph was confusing, the original character that they had at the beginning, and but then it would go into like Days of Future Past, though it would be like 2 seasons later that the Phoenix Saga happened. So I can totally understand it was very jumbled continuity if you were used to the comic books. Yeah. And there's a kitty that just jumped down. Okay, I'll take over this now. But leading into that, let me first see. Steve, what are you wearing there? You're on mute.
Take myself off mute. There we go. I'm just wearing sort of my Rebel support t-shirt here. Beautiful image of the symbol of the rebellion with some X-wings.
Okay, and Brian, how about you?
So I've been listening to a lot of music, electronic music lately, and my My friends back in Orlando from the Circuit Church electronic modular community is near and dear to my heart, even though I'm here in Seattle with a different modular community that I'm kind of like getting interested in. But yeah, my friends are they're struggling, even though Orlando is again not where like opened up more than I would be. But it's they're always near and dear to my heart, and I miss them. So
okay, well my shirt is Zan from the Wonder Twins, and Zan Zanowitz, get it, so that means I am going to be talking about Super Friends first. But what I'm holding here is the start of the 1973 Super Friends. I'm going to talk about a later season. The show ran for 13 years, had 9 official seasons, and the seasons I'm going to talk about were right at the end. And this is the 80s. So in 84, the show was known as Super Friends, the legendary Superpowers show. And in the following year, they dumped the Super Friends tag, and they were known as the Superpowers Team Galactic Guardians. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is one thing I loved in the 80s was that toy line TV comic synergy. It probably was best exemplified by G.I. Joe and Transformers. And characters that would debut in the comic book series, you couldn't wait for them to make their appearance in the cartoon or the action figure. There was a lot of triangularity with that kind of dynamic, and DC weren't averse to that. And in 1984, lightning don't strike me if I'm wrong by a year, the Kenner toy company began the Superpowers line, which to date is one of the most beautifully sculpted toy lines around. And Super Friends was adapted for that. And what we had in this particular season was the introduction of Firestorm, and also the introduction of Darkseid and the other New God characters as adversaries. The following season, I'm the first to say Super Friends has not aged well. It really hasn't. It's a show that was made in the 70s and 80s and looks like it was made in the 70s and 80s. However, in the final season, Superpowers Team Galactic Guardians, there's 2 episodes in this season. The first is an episode called The Fear, which was actually a pilot for a serious Batman animated series. And we're talking with this that would have aired in 1985. So you're looking at 7 years prior to the Batman the Animated Series. And there's also the final episode of Super Friends, final episode of all time, called The Death of Superman, which literally is a covering of the death of Superman. And those are 2 pretty powerful episodes. So it was nice to see the show go out on some high notes. I just, I will always have a fondness for Super Friends in general, but I have a really big fondness for this particular time. So wanted to spotlight those.
I don't think I've watched some of those later seasons. I need to go maybe check those out.
Okay. And also when you're talking about seasons, at that point they were so repeat heavy on broadcast TV. There's only 8 episodes in each of the seasons, so you can get through it in like 3 hours and change.
James,
that's something that I noticed. Yeah,
Cyborg. I guess Cyborg was in these.
Yeah, Cyborg was in the final season, and the Cyborg Superpowers figure was ridiculously hard to find. I had to get a Mexico copy of Super Amigos, and this was in 1987 or so. I finally got one. The Cyborg figure was impossible to find because he was shortlisted in the box. There'd be like one Cyborg within the 24. It was really bad. It was really hard to find. But yeah, Cyborg made his debut in the final season, and then I guess that kind of led later credibility with justifying his entry into the Justice League and as one of DC's principal characters.
I love those action figures. I actually did have, when I was a kid, I had the Superman one with the fabric cape, which was pretty cool. And it was one of those shows that I watched a lot when I was a kid, and I'm just watching in the background my cat just doing all sorts of interesting things. But anyway, just don't push over my piles of comics, please. That's all I ask of her. It was a really cool series. But like you said, Bill, there's so many reruns, and just they aired everything out of order, so you could watch one episode and then the next episode has nothing to do with it, and it was probably produced 4 years prior, and the animation style is different and the characters might be slightly it's a different squad, but
yeah, the syndicated packages they had were really crazy. I mean, there was a later one that mixed in the Filmation cartoons from the 60s. I mean, and you just no sense of continuity through them whatsoever.
So I'm gonna take her and put her out of the office because she is just going wild right now. But 2 seconds.
So Bryan, as a child of the 80s, did you have any superpowers figures?
No, I didn't, which is surprising because I mean, obviously knew who Superman, I mean, all of them, but yeah, no, I don't know why. I did have a few early X-Men figures. I have my my capeless Mr. Sinister somewhere around. I found him in one of my mom's old collections of things. But yeah, no.
Yeah, someday I'll talk about my toy collection. It's pretty stunning.
I bet. I have no doubt.
It's pretty stunning.
You should do a live a live stream from the bunker.
Yes, you should. You really
should. Someday. I'm actually going through them for insurance purposes and taking pictures of the front and back and the SKU numbers. Wow. And it's going to be like a multi-year project. It's pretty insane. It's pretty insane. Because also, I got back into toys in the 80s. And I remember my dad just scratching his head when I was like 18 years old, 18, 19, and asking for the Hall of Justice for Christmas. the superpowers, Hall of Justice. And, those were also different times where, you're lucky if a toy has 6 months shelf life nowadays, whereas with remainders and places like KB Toys, that you could find toys easily that were released 3 years prior, easily, and usually for very cheap. So
James, I guess, saved up his lunch money to buy a Superpowers Joker figure, and to this day he regrets not taking better care of it. So many of us who took him in the bathtub.
For me, it's like the 70s, the Mego figures and Star Wars. You just cry. You just cry. And some of it was altruism. I mean, the 12-inch Mego Lex Luthor had an amazing afterlife down the street with the Weebers as Barbie's father. It wasn't also, this wasn't like my mother gave it away, like I gave it away. The one that kills me though is the Alien, the 16-inch Alien by Kenner. I gave that to a hospital like a dope.
Well, I think
kids.
Maprasar imagines your house, Bill, as something of like a Blockbuster and a Toys R Us on the inside. So at some point,
and a good bit of Disco Matter Sam Goody too. Yeah, no, I'm a Jeppy museum. I'm a Jeppy museum that isn't worth much. Let's put it that way. But
we'll find out when you tally everything for insurance.
Yeah, no, I really need a house. I really do need a house. The townhouse isn't cutting it. So, all right, let's go over to Steve again. Steve, tell us about another animated thing that you dig.
So I know this is kind of a controversial choice because a lot of people, it was not really received as well as it probably could have been. This is, of course, Batman: The Killing Joke. This was made into a film in 2016. It is based on, obviously, the Alan Moore, Brian Boland graphic novel that came out in, I think it was it 86 or is it 88? I want to say 88.
87 or
I think it was
88.
1980. Yeah.
I was still in college, so it wasn't as late as 89.
Okay, yeah. So it's it's definitely it's an iconic graphic novel. It's some of the images, some of the pictures from it are just really well known. And in fact, let's see if I can share one of them right here, if it'll let me. There we go. There's there's one of the covers. This is also used promotionally for the poster of the movie. Let's see if I can find another image that's also equally very recognizable.
I could just keep holding this and going back.
Or you can keep holding that. There we go. Yeah. Some of the artwork and the images are just extremely immediately recognizable. So, long story short about this, the original graphic novel that's based on, we lost Bryan. It essentially gives out a relatively new, but not really, origin of the Joker, mixed in with with his current escapades, trying to drive Commissioner Gordon mad, basically destroy him as a person, just for kicks, because he's crazy. He's the Joker. And in doing so, ends up tragically injuring and crippling Barbara Gordon, and leading to her reassessment of her identity as Oracle, rather than Batgirl or Barbara Gordon, just the daughter of Commissioner Gordon. It's really tragic. The story, of course, turns that tragedy, thankfully, into something. People loved Barbara Gordon as Oracle because she essentially was the backbone for the information community in DC Comics, for pretty much everybody, the Justice League, for the Batman universe, and basically everybody. She, the Birds of Prey. I mean, she was Oracle, and this kind of introduced that to her. And the fact that this was kind of an outside of canon book, it wasn't Elseworlds, but it was just another story. But because that was so impactful, they incorporated Barbara Gordon's transformation into the greater DC universe. So very interesting book. Obviously, it was semi-controversial with the way that they violently depicted what happened to Barbara. But the movie itself, albeit a really faithful translation of the comic for the base storyline, for the essential storyline of the history of the Joker, the sort of the origin of the Joker that's being put out, as well as the plot with Commissioner Gordon trying to destroy him, torture him, humiliate him, give him crazy hallucinations, parade him around naked, which I'm not complaining, and of course the eventual recapture of the Joker.
The Brian Boland version of Gordon is is really daddy attractive.
Oh yeah, and that because they kept the same art style for the animation, which is very interesting because this is a Bruce Timm produced and co-written film. And Bruce Timm, of course, has a very distinct style in his, from the Batman animated series and a couple of his other directly produced animated DC films. But they did keep do a really good job keeping the original style of Boland's art. The interesting thing about the movie is that there's a sort of the first part of the movie.
Yeah, I'm just going to interject there before someone complains. He did not write this movie. This is actually no, he executive produced it. He was one of the two executive producers.
With Azzarello.
I don't see a credit there. I just see written by Brian Azzarello.
So I mean, Azzarello did like the main script, but I think they co-plotted it together because Tim was very much in support of this. Okay. But anyway, they discussed very strongly what direction they wanted the movie to go into, and the way that they depicted Batgirl, I think, is probably the most controversial part of this, in that she appears to be relatively ineffective as a crime fighter. She has rage issues, and basically seems to be less effective as a crime fighter compared to Batman. So there, of course, is that sort of like mentor-mentee relationship, but it goes a little bit further in the movie in that she also has a sexual relationship with Batman, which was a big no-no, really. I mean, it's not something character-wise that fits with Barbara Gordon, but Azzarello, with him support, obviously, they wanted to do something a little bit different with the movies to put a new stamp on the original work. It was not received very well, that decision. But that aside, I think that this is a really very faithful adaptation. The way that they were able to really bring out, Moore's original story and Boland's artwork, not in real life, but in Technicolor on screen, I think was done really well. They hit all the same beats, all the big major beats. Even some of the dialogue is still just taken right out of the book. It's pretty cool. I really thought it was great. The Barbara stuff aside, the Batgirl, sexual relationship with Batman aside, which, doesn't really sit well, but everything else, I think was just was a really good adaptation. So I don't know if anybody else saw that.
Yeah, well, of course I've seen it. I come out on the side of being negative about it because, and not for the reasons that I think some people are. There's some people just think that the established relationships are sacrosanct and you can't deviate from that. And I've never subscribed to that. I just thought the first 40 minutes, which are basically dedicated to Barbara Gordon, and as you said, Steve, her relative ineffectiveness as a crime fighter, her anger issues, her insecurities, I just didn't find that interesting at all in the execution. I think a story could be told with those elements that could potentially be well done. This just wasn't it. I didn't care. I just didn't care about her. And one thing that was interesting when the series first came, when the graphic novel or one, I don't know how the Prestige book, I don't know how the hell you characterize it, first came out. At that point in time, Batgirl didn't matter one bit. She couldn't hold even a backup series. It actually in Crisis on Infinite Earths, which had only happened a few years earlier, if you had gone by popularity, it would have made more sense to kill off Power Girl and Batgirl instead of Supergirl and Huntress, because at that time, at least Huntress had some juice in terms of popularity.
Huntress juice.
Yeah, whatever. So my objections to it weren't that that they treated the character in the manner that they treat her. I think you could find an interesting story where she is Bruce's paramour, and she does have and that she is unsteady in one way or another. What they gave us though just bored me to tears.
Yeah,
but
I think
when they do get to the story, there are some scenes that are like exactly how I think in motion they would have played out, particularly with when Joker gets injured with the stars and the I'm just interested because I assume everybody here has read Killing Joke, right? Bryan, have you? Do you think Batman kills Joker at the end of it?
I mean, I don't want to believe that, but I also understand why that is sort of an implication. I don't know. I kind of let it be ambiguous in my brain.
Yeah, and I think Moore provided that. It's just interesting because there are people I know that feel passionately in both directions. Although, oh no, he definitely killed him. He definitely killed him. Well, if he definitely killed him, you would have seen the goddamn thing.
They would.
It's just
I always interpret it as sort of like it goes back, like it's fading out. It's white noise. That's how I kind of interpreted that. Joker's laughing and then he stops laughing. It's like, no, it's just Batman's having a Batman moment in his head where he's like, it's all he hears. It kind of to me, it spoke to sort of like the madness really is catching. That like, you know, here's Joker just sort of talking about like basically we're the same kind of thing. We're just all crazy here. And Batman kind of like, oh shit, maybe. Like that's how I kind of figured that. In the film, it does away with the ambiguity.
Yeah.
You know, basically, you know, the cops come and they pick him up and they take him out to Arkham. But Batman does, I think the difference here is that he ends up laughing at this joke that the Joker tells and continues to laugh even after the Joker is gone. Yeah. So maybe kind of implying that, you know, here again, Batman could be crazy, but he's not consciously like thinking about being crazy. He just is, you know, or, you know, whatever. But it's I liked it. I also like the fact the voice actors, if you were big fans of the animated series,
Peter Weller is a fantastic Batman. Fantastic.
And Mark Hamill, you know, reprising the Joker. So it's
I'm sorry, I was confusing with Dark Knight.
It's Kevin Conroy.
Okay. But no, this was one with Conroy.
Yeah, and so he reprised his role from animated series, and Mark Hamill, of course, is the Joker, who is, you know, forever the voice of the Joker. But
don't yell at me, people.
I mean,
Matt Broussard. I think we agree with this. We all want that Bruce Wang.
Hey, and most of us have seen Bruce's Wang if we've read that original version of Batman Damned #1, which I do have, I think, 2 copies of back there.
Oh, you have 2 copies?
So I can look at it in stereo. I think it was just by mistake that I got 2 copies, but I'm not complaining. I hear that they're possibly worth something.
Probably still. I don't know.
Somebody really wants to see that Batwing. I guess I got something.
All right, let's go over to Brian. Brian, what's your next pick?
So I feel like I have to do an anime.
Oh, I was surprised you wouldn't go to the other pick you had. Because of what Steve had. And...
I know. That in my head, I'm like, it's like, do we have time for both? Do we have?
Yeah, we have time for both, even if we have to speed them.
I will. I won't talk too much. All right, so let me do that. I'm gonna save the anime one for a second, but so sort of on the opposite side of the Killing Joke, if you know, in certain respects, I really think that the animated Justice League New Frontier is about as beautiful an adaptation in both being true to the text, but also the style of Bruce oh my gosh, not Bruce Timm. I mean Bruce Timm to be sure.
Darwin Cook.
Darwin Cook. Thank you. It fits that medium and that style that they have so perfectly. It's beautiful. And this is a story that a lot of comic book people, like, we know this story. We love this story. It's a beautiful love letter to DC. But I think a lot of people who come at comics from other media or just don't read comics, like, this is something to them that could be kind of special and new, because it puts certain characters really in an authentic moment in their timelines that you don't see as much in modern comics. You can go back to books from that era, those eras, I should say, and see a little bit more of that, but it's still just not the same. And this is modern storytelling choices too. So people who would read an old comic and be like, "Oh, so much exposition! My God, why do you have your characters talking like this? Oh my God!" Like, you know, I think this works well to capture that spirit of the Golden Age and the Silver Age, mostly Silver Age, I guess, of comics, but in a way that's modern and palatable. Also, there's some love letter to some really more obscure DC properties that a lot of casual comics fans don't know about. So all of this combined, of course, I love the original text. I have the hardcover Absolute Edition. Like, poring over that is still like an annual thing, at least, like, just to see how beautiful it is. And I don't know. I think of all of the DC animated adaptations, I think the more recent ones have kind of gotten a little too something for me. They kind of fell into that New 52 trap. And not my thing. But this was one of the first couple. I think it was like maybe the third or fourth. It was like...
It was early in the run. Yeah, it was
early in the run.
Yeah, it was early in the run,
and just so good, so good. Abridged, like it's not going to give you the whole experience that you would have reading the comic, very much. But if you haven't read the comic, you'll love it. If you have read the comic, it's still a lot there to love and to appreciate. So, yeah, I think, and the fact that it marries up with the founding of the Justice League and the actual like there's so many things that just line up so well. It's just it's a beautiful work. That's my favorite. DC specific animation in that animated movies. I mean, I love the Batman series and the Superman series and Justice League series. All that's great, but to me, this is that next thing that I hold up. What about you guys? You like
I loved it. I was surprised when they first announced it, and again, it is truncated from what you had in the series. The one thing I couldn't figure out is how are they going to tell the story without that preamble on Dinosaur Island with the losers, which establishes so much. And they found a way to really, very effectively in a streamlined way, cover that information, but just, out of the gate. Probably the best depiction of Hal Jordan in any medium. In any medium. If they got the nuances of that character in a film, that could be like a Bond franchise, for film after film after film. Just perfect Hal Jordan in there. The director of this is a guy, Dave Bullock, with the emphasis on the B. He's a Jersey guy, and I really wish he got more work in animation because it's an exceptionally well directed film. And there isn't a dull moment in it. There's nothing that's excessive. It's just really finely tuned. And I do think if this was your first exposure to superheroes, man, what a great first time you're dipping your toes in there. It's really wonderful. And I'm glad you picked it. I'm really glad you picked it, Brian.
Yeah, Matt also, I'm glad, reminded Matt that he hasn't finished it or hasn't read it start to finish. So, get that Absolute Edition out and crack it open and go to town, man. I haven't done it in a while since I moved, at least. So I'm going to grab that off the shelf and maybe show my boyfriend and just kind of go through it. Cause it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have it digitally, so it's not the same experience of holding the Ultimate Edition, but, yeah, I go through it every once in a while. I'll pull it up and skip around a little bit and read some parts. But the movies, like you said, it's compact. It does away with a lot of the additional information, but it still hits all the good points. It has the heart. It has the Justice League, the individual heroes spotlighted very well to give you a taste of what they look like in this era and how they act and fight crime. And they're very, I think, obviously a little bit more mature than how they would have been depicted actually in the 50s and 60s. But I just think it's gorgeous. And of course it is modeled very closely after Darwin Cook's art. So I think they did a great job.
Every hero's story is interesting. Every hero story is interesting. What happens with Batman and how a particular event makes him lighten up a bit. That was really effective in there. Everything with Martian Manhunter was great. I mean, it's so good. Wonder Woman, on an island of women, and when we first see her, and she's taller than Superman, and that's such a cool dynamic. Really good stuff. I'm going to continue in this mode for this, and again, the three. Let's go back. The two films that you mentioned were part of DC's what used to be known as direct-to-video initiative, and I'm keeping it up. And if you can see this here, this is Superman Batman Apocalypse. This was like the first sequel to one of the original films. It's a sequel to Public Enemies. Public Enemies basically covered the first arc from Superman Batman, that series. The second arc was the introduction of this new version, the New Earth version of Supergirl that Michael Turner had drawn. And it's very faithful in terms of an adaptation, but this is how long is this movie? Do we got a time on this? 78 minutes, and it feels like 2 hours. It's loaded. I know that Bryan, and I think Steve, you've also praised, what went on with Tom King and what he did with Mr. Miracle and Barda. There are shades of that in here with Barda's home life and her position as a character. Again, it talks about Supergirl coming to Earth for the first time and how that puts her on Wonder Woman's radar, and it puts her on Darkseid's radar. And just as an action movie, it's fantastic. The score is fantastic. Out of all the DC animated movies, this is like far and away my favorite. And in olden days, there were many times. Oh God, I can't think of his last name, but Gary from Warner Home Video was very kind to me with invites when they would have screenings at the Paley Center. And this was a movie that they did show at the Paley Center, and the screenings would usually be up like 2 or 3 weeks before they were released. And seeing these animated movies with an audience, man, it's so good. They don't do it anymore. I wish they did. And I know they had like a theatrical release for Killing Joke. For the film that Steve had talked about. I hope they revisit that because it was so much fun. And again, keeping with the fun, there's some laugh out loud sequences in this as well. But at the same time, it still stays dedicated to pure action. And that's the one I wanted to highlight. Sorry for strong arming you, Bryan, but I know we had 3 in a row that were very similar. So Superman, Batman, Apocalypse. It's my second choice.
I need to watch it.
It's been a long time since I've seen it.
Yeah, I need to watch it again because I do remember liking it. And I do remember I think we may have talked about it after you saw it or whatever, but like any of the New God stuff to me is so good. And Tom King, probably most recently, him has done the best with it. So
yeah,
it's all good stuff.
Okay,
cool.
Steve, what's your final pick?
I'm going to be really quick on this one. And my final pick is The Tick. So The Tick was created sort of as a joke, comics-wise, for New England Comics back in, I think it was like 1986. And eventually it became an actual comic series in about 1988, sorry. And became popular enough among the indie crowd. I'm not sure if you can see the first, I think this is the first appearance of the Tick. Again, kind of a joke character, instantly recognizable. If anybody has ever seen the cartoon or seen, the 2 different TV series that they've had, live action TV series, it's pretty straightforward. He's a goofball. He destroys more than he protects and saves. But he's lovable. And apparently it tested pretty well for the cartoon audience. And so they came up with the Tick cartoon series in 1994. It was another one of those sort of, I think it was Fox series, Fox Kids series that they came out with. And here's an image of the cartoon character versions of the Tick. You have American Made, the world's most patriotic domestic, and of course Arthur or the Moth, and several other. You have Chairface. There's also Arms Akimbo is one of my favorite other villain characters. But I mean, it's so goofy. It has tons of great, ridiculous parodies of superheroes and supervillains. And a lot of quotable dialogue. And also, the cartoon is famous for, of course, the voice of the Tick, who is Townsend. I had to look this up. Townsend Clemens, who has a very immediately recognizable voice, which was done very well, I think, in the first live-action series by, I've just forgotten his name. Instantly recognizable. What is his?
Patrick Warburton.
Patrick Warburton did a great job. It's just that sort of like...
That's why I'm here, folks.
Yeah, exactly. It's just that ridiculous sort of like baritone, I'm 100% confident when I have 0% skill kind of way of delivery. But also playing Arthur, his sidekick, in the original cartoon series, Mickey Dolenz. Which, why not one of the monkeys? Why not? It's cool. But I got a kick out of this. I watched this when it was on in the mid-90s, and then it had a second life when Comedy Central started showing it prime time, which I thought was kind of cool. But of course, there's the first TV series, live action TV series, didn't last very long with Patrick Warburton and a couple other people in there. And then Amazon Prime came out with their own live action version of The Tick, which doesn't follow the comics at all. It's all original stories. But that one's actually pretty good. And yes, Matt Broussard, Die Fledermaus. Love Die Fledermaus. But yeah, that's The Tick. If you ever want to have a chance to see something fun, the comics are so hard to get sometimes at this point. If you can find them, cool. If not, just watch the cartoon.
Even the free comic book day Tick comics are hard to find.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, even when they release one for free comic book day, because it's not a title that a lot of stores will order in any kind of respectable amounts, and yeah, even those freebies are a little difficult to come by. I remember also when the show hit home video, the first season wasn't called the complete first season; was called The Tick versus Season 1. And there was an episode that legally could not be shown anymore. Do you know any of that backstory, Steve?
No, yeah. I didn't. I remember watching it when it first came on TV. So any of the lore about it totally went over my head. I just enjoyed it for what it was. And of course, later on when I was older, I was an older teen. It was on Comedy Central, so I was able to go back and watch with nostalgia from 4 years prior. I don't know, whatever, weird things that millennials and Gen X gap kids like me enjoy.
I didn't see all of the episodes, but I remember there was one episode where there's a parody of Galactus that is so out there that it was, as I was watching, I'm like, am I really watching this? Like, are they really providing these reference points? Is anybody getting this apart from me?
It's a very
even
niche audience that appreciates it, to be sure.
It so is, and also like in universe, the jokes are consistent. Yeah. There is one episode very early on, if it might even be the pilot episode, where Chairface tries to write his name on the moon with a laser, and of course it gets stopped part of the way through, so they have CH and kind of A. But for the rest of the series, every time they show the moon, it still has that CHA in it. So I think they did a bang up job for the cartoon. I think the people making it were having a lot more fun than they probably should have for a kids show. But it testament to how well the jokes work for an older audience as well. That it did pretty good.
So Matt chimed in here. I wanted to capture his stuff. Patrick Warburton, if you've ever had the chance to either meet him in person, he is the Tick. He is that voice. He is Kronk to me from My Person Who Grew. I know a lot of people think of him as Putty from Seinfeld or whatever. Like, to me, he's Kronk. But the other thing is, animated series, Bob's Burgers does have some great little gay and bear references, which is amazing. And the notorious Sloppy Bears exchange, Brandon actually played for me a while back, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe they went there. I love it. But yeah, anyway, we're caught up on comments.
Yeah.
All right, Brian, what about you? What was the anime that you want to talk about?
So yeah, I have to talk about Nausicaä. I was really trying to find a really rich grossing picture, and a lot of people don't realize that it's a manga, because a lot of the Ghibli stuff isn't based on that, but Miyazaki actually did a manga that you can still get. It's very easy to obtain, I believe, and it's awesome because I know a lot of people think when they see this movie, it's early Miyazaki, so it's kind of got some stylistic things that they love, like Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke being in that same kind of tone, but very sci-fi. It's futuristic-y in that it's like a ruined, destroyed world. But if you want to know more about the story and you feel like it kind of gives you the abridged version, which you wouldn't necessarily know, the comic, the manga, goes into so much more stuff. It really fills out the world in a way that is such a lovely compliment, especially if you've seen the movie. So those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, Studio Ghibli, and then Miyazaki, Hayao, I can't say his name, Hayao Miyazaki, the elder, because now Goro is doing weird 3D animation stuff that's his son, and it's like. Is probably Japan's like most famous and probably one of its best visual storytellers. I mean, throughout the modern era of Japanese animation and manga before it, he has this reputation of just being something really special. And he's still with us. He's got to be up in his getting up there into like the mid to late 80s. But he's done just so many beautifully rendered worlds, 2D animation, hand drawn. There's a great documentary series NHK put out recently, I think maybe earlier this year or very soon there before, that covered different time periods in his life and how his process is so intricate. He definitely takes his time, and that's what a lot of people get frustrated about. But he workshops his ideas with his fellow animators and his team. He's like trying to just like take new stories, but also some existing material. I'm thinking like Castle in the Sky and Howl's Moving Castle, like existing material from British, I think mostly British authors, and adapts it and does some kind of neat stuff with it. So yeah, if you're not familiar, you got to go check it out. It is beautiful. There's some amazing Disney. Brian Lasseter, before he fell out of grace because of probably bad things, head of Pixar for a while, Pixar Animation. Was
it Lasseter? I was trying to think it was Lasseter or Bradbury, but you're right, it's Lasseter.
Yeah. Lasseter. Yeah, it sucks because he was like Miyazaki's biggest like fan and supporter, and like begged Ghibli and Miyazaki specifically to let Disney distribute here. And I mean, I think overall Disney did a pretty good job of they put out these beautiful Blu-ray and DVD before they put them in movie theaters. They got great English voice cast to dub it. The dubs were really good. They not perfect. No dub is ever perfect, right? Especially if you can kind of tell there's a disconnect, but convincing, well synced, all that good stuff, with an amazing talented cast. And it's still out there. You can watch these. I think does Disney Plus have these? I wouldn't be shocked. No?
HBOMax.
Oh, that's
They're
right.
all on HBOMax.
That's right. So
in fact, all of them, like almost including the extended Ghibli ones that are not Miyazaki.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because Ghibli left Disney about 4 years ago, right?
Is that when they
that arrangement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder. I have the Blu-rays from when Disney did distribute them. I'm interested to know if they're going to do another release in higher res, 4K, whatever. But yeah, HBO Max, that's great. So yeah, just if you really are kind of like rounding the corner, you're like, what kind of thing do I want to do? Go watch some Miyazaki movies specifically. But Grave of the Fireflies, another great film from one of the Ghibli creators, whose name I can't remember. Izuhara.
We just talked about this right before the show.
Yeah. And so, I mean, like, just, anyway. And the music, gosh, Joe Hisaishi, one of my favorite film composers that no one's heard of outside of Japan, unless you're a Ghibli fan and you follow his stuff. And I mean, just the scores to all of his movies, they're all different, all very specific to the tone. Anyway, I could talk probably as long as Steve talked about Sailor Moon about Ghibli, but we don't have time for that. So go check out one of the first ones, Princess Mononoke. Princess Mononoke. Check that one out too. Nausicaä, Valley of the Wind. And then, if you're interested in the manga, again, highly recommended. Go check that out too, and let us know what you think.
I
had to chime in here. It's Takahata who did Grave of the Fireflies.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a note.
I think James did. James get that? Isao Takahata.
Yep. Thank you so much.
There we go.
Yeah. Which when we were talking about anime before the show, it didn't make my cut because it's actually based on a short story, and not a comic book, and not a manga. So but I love Grave of the Fireflies. Love it. It's make sure you have tissues on hand when you watch that one. Steve, are you checking into HBO Max right now? Were you looking at that?
Am I looking at HBO Max now?
I was just wondering if that's what you were doing, because I was just wondering if the Lupin movie that since it isn't part of for a long time wasn't part of the canon or whatever the hell you say.
Was that Ghibli or was that just Miyazaki?
That was Miyazaki.
I think it was just Miyazaki. I don't think it's.
I don't think it was Ghibli.
I don't think it's in there.
Castle of Cagliostro, right?
Yeah,
that's a fantastic. If you don't know about Lupin, which is another good choice actually, because that was I believe a manga well before.
Tezuka, yeah.
Wait, was it Tezuka?
Yeah. Or am I confusing it with Blackjack?
Yeah, Blackjack's definitely Tezuka. I don't.
Or did Tezuka do it? I don't know.
Tezuka did Adam Boy and
Princess Knight.
Golgo 13.
No,
did he do
Golgo?
No, he did Devilman.
Yep, Devil.
Oh yeah.
He did, I think, Devilman. But the biggest one naturally is Mighty Atom, which was Adam Boy.
Yeah.
And then there's like the smaller ones like Metropolis and some stuff. Okay.
So this is on HBO Max right now. They've got Ponyo, Mononoke, Nausicaä, Arrietty, which I think was the last one that it may have been the last one, or maybe right before this one that Disney stopped. That Disney stopped distributing.
Oh, so they didn't get the wind on the hill or whatever, the wind one. The one about the airplane. That was Miyazaki's last film. Was the one about
Wind Rises. Wind Rises is available on here. They actually also have When Marty Was There, Ocean Waves, some weird ones that probably most people haven't seen. From Up on Poppy Hill.
Okay.
Basically everything.
All right. You said some weird ones, Steve, when you were referring to others. And the last pick that I have is super weird at this point in time.
Yay!
Super weird. And the property I want to talk about is Teen Titans Go.
Yes.
Okay. Teen Titans Go started life as part of the DC Nation shorts when they were on Cartoon Network, I think so. Okay, Cartoon Network. And the premise behind the Teen Titans Go shorts were, what do superheroes do on their day off? And very wisely, they used the same voice cast as the previous Teen Titans cartoon. And again, later there was a direct-to-video of Teen Titans versus Teen Titans Go. That's separate from this, what I want to talk about. If you have not watched this show within the last 2 or 3 years, it is batshit crazy. It's as if the adults don't know what's happening. The one that I pulled here is the first part of season 5. Among the episodes here is a full episode dedicated to Starfire's love of her new best friend, which is an ice cream scoop. There's an episode that goes into ridiculous detail about the history of the Soviet Union, and also just prior to that, another episode that goes into ridiculous detail about the metric system and how it's never taken off in the United States. There's an American Idol type of situation. If you've watched the show recently, you know that there's an ongoing thread with The Night Begins to Shine, which is a whole other thing about a song that was in Warner's archives that was supposed to be used for some kind of animated pilot. It never happened. They had 40 seconds of Cyborg with no music. They plug it in, and the song goes to number 23 on the digital charts. There's so much crazy stuff. They recently had a 4-episode arc with the Doom Patrol. Again, Beast Boy was once part of the Doom Patrol. I was not prepared for white trash Doom Patrol. It's amazing. You really, if you just love absurdist stuff, you really have to go to this, particularly after season 3, because it feels as if, they're making a show for children, but it works on that same level as shows like Bullwinkle does, where there are literary and cultural points that are going to go so far over kids' heads, but adults are going to be dying. And dying of laughter. Let me make sure that people know that. So I heartily beseech thee, my fellow co-hosts and anyone viewing this or listening to this, check some of these out because they're so nuts and it's so much fun.
One of my favorites was the one that was an entire the entire episode was an 80s metal, like basically an 80s metal rock video.
That's The Night Begins to Shine.
That's The Night Begins to Shine, where they all transform into like extreme, like 80s neon versions of of themselves.
Weird.
The animation style is completely different.
Oh my
Everything.
God! When Raven says, "We might just be too cool," look how they're decked out.
It's so cool.
We might just be too cool. And even very recently, they had a tribute to Transformers that was really, really beautiful in its own twisted way. They also addressed the there was a tie-in with the Thundercats, Argo, or whatever the hell the reboot was, and just the central message was to people, if you love the original, lighten up, and even has Lion-O from heaven coming down. I mean, it's so crazy. The show is so nuts. The Doom Patrol stuff. I mean, that those were 4 episodes of just absolute pure joy. The
movie was great. The movie was wonderful.
The Teen Titan goes to the movies. Yep.
Wonderful movie.
And plus these episodes are, again, we are talking about some that are like 4 episode arcs, but the shows are 15 minutes long, 11 minutes without commercials, so they're very quick jabs. And I suggest people check out, particularly after season 3, because the parents don't know what the kids are smoking, and it's and it shows. It's amazing.
Wow.
All right. Well, I think we've had some 9 really pretty cool choices. For if people have not checked those out, I mean, I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that I might check Sailor Moon at some point, and obviously
Maybe.
I will go to Sailor Moon Crystal. So, all right.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, the old ones from the 90s are hard to watch now, just as an FYI.
Okay.
If you don't have any nostalgia for them.
Yeah. All right, folks, so we're going to start wrapping this episode up. And when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment. In the bear community, if you find a fella attractive, you woof at him. We do something similar here where we signify something. Might be a comic book, might be a TV program, might be a charitable initiative. It'd be many things under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start, as I always do, with Steve. Steve, what is your Woof of the Week?
Well, my Woof of the Week is another TV show. This one's not as maybe not as exciting and fun as a comic adaptation. But if you are a fan of Bake Off, you might enjoy Great British Menu. And I've talked about this. It's probably been a couple of years since I have, but it's a great show where you get chefs from all over the UK that come and compete in different regional heats to create some amazing dishes. They have several courses that they have to create over the course of a week, and the top 2 chefs from each week get to basically make those same dishes for the judges, and the judges give them their critiques, and the winners from that go on to the final banquet where they get to make their dish. There is a new 16th limited series that was being produced during the COVID lockdown in the UK. So it's a very different format, but it still has all the wonderful things that Great British Menu is known for, in that the chefs are brilliant. They're amazing. What they create is gorgeous and incredible, and they help each other. It is one of the wonderful things about that and Bake Off that I think has the same through line, where these chefs actually are interested in the success of their fellows. Even though they're in competition, they want everybody to do as best as they can, like the best they can, to put out the dishes in this competition. So if you can watch it, it's on BBC right now, with season 16 for the Christmas banquet in support of emergency workers and frontline workers. So check it out.
All right, over to Brian. Brian, what is your Woof of the Week?
Can you guys hear me? Oh yeah, my thing's down. My woof is for Elliot Page, who, if you're not following the news, came out as transgender And Elliot is probably most recently known from the work in Umbrella Academy, where they play Vanya. And I am not caught up on the Umbrella Academy at all. So I am like, oh, cool. I know, and I obviously I've seen a little bit, and I knew they were in it, but I didn't, I haven't seen the whole thing. So yeah, I'm very excited for them. They do use he, them, he, they, them pronouns. So my boyfriend and I were talking about this. We're like, I don't know, since Caitlyn Jenner, that there has been such a high profile trans celebrity that has come out and said, hey. So I am immensely happy for him. I really want to share all the love and support, because I know that invariably people, when they decide to reveal this, get a lot of haters and a lot of bullshit. And I think his statement even said that, like, his biggest fear was the nonsense that he would earn. I also have a not personal connection, but he came down to Orlando after Pulse and did this like gut wrenching report about the Pulse aftermath. So he's always earned a place in my heart for that. In addition to all of his other fantastic genre roles, going back even to X-Men. And I guess Juno, kind of, sort of, which isn't really genre, but kind of, sort of. So
I love Juno.
Yeah.
I love that film.
100%. And
Hard Candy.
And Hard Candy, that's
Hard
right.
Candy.
So, and Netflix, to their credit, has already changed his name in all the Umbrella Academy and all the other stuff that they have. So, kudos to Elliot. Very happy to have him be his authentic self. So, if you didn't hear, you heard it from us. But please go give him your love and support, because he needs it right now.
Cool. All right. I have a subwoof and then my real woof. The subwoof, I just wanted to share this with people because this is something you can get for free right now. Travelers Insurance put out a comic book that deals with some of the problems with texting while you drive and other distractions. So the comic book is called Zadie, The Legend of Z-Hawk. And if you look over here with the names, there's some familiar names with comic books. Gail Simone and Jim Calafiore put this together. And you naturally can download it. But you can also order it for free. And when you order it for free, you get this nice package. The main reason I want to talk about this right now is because there's only 60 of these left, it appears, that you can order from. So you have the comic book. You have a nice tote bag with the Zadie, the Z-Hawk. You get a T-shirt. And the T-shirts, the biggest size they had was extra large, so that's some motivation for me. And you also have a Zadie sticker and a button, and you can go to Travelers Insurance and see if you can still get that stuff.
You had me at enamel pin /button, let me tell you. And the fact that Zadie is hilarious to me.
Yeah.
Zadie.
Okay. And then my other woof of the week is a documentary series. A little earlier last week or sometime, I posted that there are a few documentary subjects where I will watch any and all documentaries about them. Comic books, naturally, the Zodiac Killer, Jonestown, and Watergate. So this week, thanks to Steve, I was able to watch Slow Burn, which aired premiered earlier this year on the Epix network. It's based on the podcast of the same name. I have to say, I think it's actually a little more effective as a TV series than as a podcast, mainly because there was so much emphasis on the visual in the podcast. To actually see that as it's happening, I think was a storytelling bonus. And again, it covers Watergate, and it doesn't necessarily cover the same ground that things like the Frontline episode or All the President's Men did. It goes off into some side stories and some side profiles, and the people that orbited Watergate are just such amazing characters. Sam Irwin, who headed the committee, the impeachment committee, and the series starts off with a profile of Martha Mitchell, and that episode in itself, the first episode, is a riveting hour of television. So it's available on Epix, and there are many freebie signups for Epix where you can get it for free. You can also Roku channel has a free promotion with that. So there's many ways to get this for free if you want to see it. And again, it's a documentary series called Slow Burn on Watergate.
That's awesome. I have not delved into Watergate in a while, but I feel like as much documentaries as I've been watching about Scientology and other stuff, I enjoy this. James Figueredo had a little woof that we should share. So his friend Marco Bim, I don't know. His co-editor at Bear Nerd just released his art book, Guts and Fur, The Art of Marco Bim on Gumroad. Oh, okay. So when he showcases his work based on 3 of his big passions, RPG, comics, and bears, with an erotic approach. Oh my gosh. So it's got pinups and artworks he did over the last couple of years, and a Guts and Fur RPG guide, which I didn't know you guys had, where he adapts the various types of bear community into classes of RPG archetypes and 2 short comic stories. That is excellent. I'm glad you put the link there. We'll try to share it out on the Facebook page directly. Yeah. That's awesome. Fantastic.
If you guys remember when I was turned into a barbarian, that was Marco.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, then we should check it out.
Well, so I wonder if you're in the collection then.
I wonder. Yeah. Congratulations, Marco. That sounds awesome. Anything else from the chat, or are we ready to wrap it?
That, I believe. So I missed Matt Brassard's on a scale of to Steve, on a scale of 1 to Paul Hollywood. How appetizing is that show?
Let's just say that every season there are usually a half dozen or so bears, plus some of the judge head chefs are very tasty.
Yeah.
Very
apparently the show a lot of people are watching now is Forged in Fire, about the blacksmithing stuff. Apparently there's some really, really woofy guys involved in those.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
many choices. Must be the industry.
So many choices.
I did find the link to that Zaddy Travelers thing, so I just did it too. So there's still stuff left. So
awesome.
I'm gonna find the link and I'll post it on the chat.
Yeah, and hey, free comics are free comics. You know, come on. All right, we're gonna wrap this one up for good. And Brian, I do think we should have as you get a little closer to the end with that, maybe we can bring on some of our friends like Chris Cummins and have a Scientology aftermath fair game episode in itself, because there's so much stuff. I mean, I know we all can talk about this for hours, and
yes,
especially with this really interesting sort of alignment with NXIVM. And just the similarities of stories, and especially I can't wait for you guys to listen to that episode of Fair Game with Paul. What's his name? Was it Paul?
Mark.
Oh, Mike Render. Oh, Mark Vicente.
Mark Vicente. Yeah.
Mark Vicente.
Yeah. He doesn't have a moniker like Nippy that it immediately comes
Nippy.
to you.
Oh, fucking Nippy.
Oh, Nippy.
And it's also funny now, I've seen, I put 2 and 2 together, and oh, Nippy was on that show. Oh, Nippy played that, so.
Yeah, I don't know what he was an actor as well. I didn't know he was an actor.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I forget Sarah Edmondson. She had one really big voiceover role. Do you know what that was?
No,
I'm not sure. It was something that was filmed in Vancouver.
All I see is her tattoo now, or her brand. Terrible. It's not what we want, but yeah, I'll look that up. Yeah.
Yeah. Just looking at here. So I feel for people who what she was in. She had one really big voiceover role.
She was in Salvation, which I think I remember. Andromeda on Sci-Fi, Continuum, Stargate SG-1, which I love. It's a great show. Hawaii Five-0. She played the love interest to Grace Park's Hawaii Five-0 character. No way. Oh my gosh. And Grace Park was caught up in NXIVM too, I believe. Edgemont, CBC Teen Soap Series.
Okay. Max Steel. She played Sydney on Max Steel.
Max Steel, yeah. Oh, and she was in My Little Pony.
And Wendy Whistle's in My Little Pony, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's some cool. Yeah, so just letting people know, folks, we talk a lot about the vow and the Scientology stuff when we're offline. So at some point we got to memorialize it and just have fun talking about that stuff. So. And when you guys get into Jonestown, it's not that big a puddle jump too. So dark. All right. All right. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears podcast. If you want to listen to us, please do so by downloading us through iTunes. You can listen to us through Stitcher Radio and a lot of the other podcatching platforms. Please, please, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. For everybody that was streaming in through YouTube and also the Facebook Live, thank you so much. You make all these episodes, matter so much more to us, that we have people that we can interact with. It really means a lot to us. So until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Brian Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
On the audio version, if you're listening, you're going to hear a woof and an explosion. We'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.
Woof, boom.